Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The autumn sun bathed the city of New Haven, and the air was thick with the smell of hot tar and coffee. In a busy but quiet neighborhood, a minor altercation had drawn attention. A citizen had reported a suspicious vehicle double-parked. At the forefront of the scene was Captain Angela Carter, a black woman, elegant in her impeccably pressed uniform, wearing the badge that symbolized years of dedication and discipline. She was respected for her rigor, her problem-solving skills, and her way of treating every citizen with dignity. That's when James Parker arrived, a recently promoted white police officer known for his arrogance and need for attention. The moment he saw Angela, he frowned and gave a condescending smile. For him, a black woman, even a captain, was simply an authority figure he could easily defy. "Well, and who exactly are you?" he asked mockingly. "Are you going to tell us how to do our job?" Angela felt her blood run cold. She could handle criminals, but Parker's arrogance was a different story. She took a deep breath and replied in a firm but controlled voice, "I'm Captain Angela Carter. And I'm simply making sure the law is upheld." But Parker, completely unaware of the importance of the woman in front of him, burst out laughing. "Captain, eh? And I suppose everyone here has to take orders from you," he said, sneering at the assembled colleagues, some uncomfortable, others amused by the scene. Angela felt anger rising, but she remained calm. Every muscle in her body was tense, ready to react. Yet she knew that true power lay not in anger, but in strategy. What he didn't know was that she wasn't alone. Her husband, David Carter, the director of the National Police, received every report and knew the situation better than anyone. The humiliation Parker thought he had inflicted was actually the beginning of his downfall. The arrogant gestures he considered a triumph would soon backfire. Angela, despite her outward humiliation, managed a faint smile inwardly. The lesson he was about to learn would be unforgettable. And in the shadow of this small scene, the balance of power had just shifted. The next morning, James Parker was already at the precinct, chatting with his colleagues about the previous day's incident. He was still chuckling to himself, imagining Captain Angela Carter's bewilderment. "Honestly, she had no idea what she was doing," he said, a smug smile playing on his lips. His colleagues nodded, some amused, others slightly uncomfortable with his arrogance. Meanwhile, Angela Carter was in her office, analyzing the situation. She calmly drafted a detailed report on Parker's behavior and sent it directly to David Carter, her husband and director of the National Police, with a simple but incisive note: his arrogance could harm the integrity of the unit. A few hours later, Parker was summoned to headquarters. Thinking it was just a routine check, he whistled his way into the director's office. David Carter was sitting behind his desk, his fingers interlaced, his gaze calm but penetrating. "Hello, James," David began, his voice soft but authoritative. "I heard about your initiative yesterday." Parker smiled confidently. "Oh, it was nothing, sir. Just a little reminder to a captain." David didn't move. "Just a reminder," he repeated. Then he tapped Angela's report on his desk. "Let's see, according to this document, your reminder was perceived as a public humiliation, not only for Captain Carter, but for your entire unit." Parker's smile slowly faded. He looked at the document, then at David's impassive face. "Wait, you are..." he stammered. David inclined his head slightly. "I'm married to Angela Carter. And here, James, we have strict rules. Your behavior could result in demotion, an official warning, and even your dismissal if it happens again." Parker felt panic setting in. His arrogance from the day before had turned into pure fear. Everyone at the precinct was going to find out that he had humiliated not only a captain, but the wife of the director himself. I didn't mean to." Parker tried, but David cut him off with a sharp gesture. "Intention isn't the issue, James. It's the consequences that matter." Parker finally understood that underestimating someone could be very costly. He left the director's office with a heavy heart, realizing that his arrogance had led him into a trap he could no longer avoid. In the shadow of this confrontation, Angela smiled slightly. Her strategy had barely begun, and Parker would soon learn that humiliation can turn into a lesson, in the most unexpected way. A few days later, James Parker returned to work as if nothing had happened. But a subtle nervousness followed him everywhere. Every glance he exchanged with Angela Carter reminded him of the previous day's humiliation. He couldn't help but wonder, what does she know that I don't? Angela, for her part, showed no open animosity. On the contrary, she behaved with icy calm, as if nothing had happened. But in her mind, a strategy was taking shape. She knew that the best revenge lay not in immediate public humiliation, but in demonstrating competence and total control of the situation. One morning, she summoned Parker for a special assignment. "James, I have a delicate case I'd like you to take on," she said calmly, almost gently. "It's a surveillance operation targeting a series of minor offenses downtown. The timeline is tight, and it will require coordinating several units." Parker, flattered by the apparent attention, immediately accepted. "Of course, Captain. I can handle that without any problem." Angela smiled inwardly. What he didn't know was that every step of this mission had been designed to test his competence and document his mistakes. She had previously alerted several experienced colleagues to observe his actions and note every misstep. In the days that followed, Parker tried to oversee the operation. But communications were chaotic, witnesses were difficult to locate, and unforeseen incidents multiplied. With each mistake, Angela discreetly intervened to rectify the situation, never revealing that she was orchestrating everything. Parker's frustration was growing, but he couldn't say anything without revealing his incompetence. Every move he made was meticulously noted by Angela, and every error report went directly to her husband, David Carter. One evening, as Parker returned exhausted from the mission, he received a call from the director's office. "James, we need to discuss your results," said David's voice calmly. Parker felt his stomach clench. He was finally beginning to understand that his arrogant victory over Angela was nothing but a mirage. The real lesson would unfold slowly and relentlessly. The following week, James Parker was on the verge of exhaustion. The mission Angela had assigned him had turned into a series of unforeseen problems. Witnesses kept changing their statements, poorly coordinated units caused delays, and every action he took to correct mistakes seemed to create new complications. Every evening, Parker returned home frustrated and furious, unable to understand how a simple routine mission had turned into a nightmare. He began to notice that some colleagues were avoiding him or exchanging knowing glances. A rumor seemed to be circulating in the hallways: Angela had perfectly supervised the mission while letting Parker believe he was in control. One morning, Parker received an official email from David Carter's office. Preliminary report on the monitoring mission, numerous coordination errors, critical delays, and poor resource management. A full evaluation will be presented at the weekend meeting. David Carter. Panic began to set in. Parker knew his reputation would take a serious hit, and that his career was likely to suffer. He then realized that the arrogance he had displayed in humiliating Angela was now just a distant memory. Now, he himself was under everyone's scrutiny. The day of the meeting arrived. Angela presented the report with icy calm. Her words were precise, her data impeccable. She showed how every mistake Parker had made had been anticipated, how she had discreetly corrected his actions, and how the mission had ultimately been a success thanks to her intervention. Parker felt the heat rising to his cheeks. The colleagues who had once admired him now looked at Angela with respect and gave her disapproving glances. Every word Angela spoke was a silent but relentless lesson. At the end of the meeting, David Carter spoke. "James, we need to have a serious discussion about your behavior and your handling of this mission. Your mistakes have been documented, and disciplinary action will be considered." Parker sat frozen, realizing that his arrogance had led to public humiliation. Angela's subtle and methodical lesson had just had its first effect. He had thought he was in control of the situation, but in reality, he had been manipulated from beginning to end. At that moment, Angela merely offered a slight smile. She wasn't finished yet. The real revenge was still to come, and Parker was about to discover that underestimating someone could cost far more than just professional failure. The tension was palpable at National Police Headquarters. Parker knew this morning's meeting would be crucial. Every step he took echoed in the corridor, but he didn't dare look up at Angela. She walked with quiet confidence, her heels clicking softly on the floor, her gaze impassive yet penetrating. The conference room was filled with high-ranking officers and colleagues. Angela spoke with disconcerting calm. "Today, we will review the results of the monitoring mission entrusted to James Parker." Parker felt his stomach clench. The documents and evidence were there, every mistake noted, every delay detailed. But Angela hadn't just collected the errors, she had also shown how she had rectified each situation, saving the operation from complete disaster. "As you can see," Angela continued, "some decisions were made without proper consultation, leading to delays and complications. However, thanks to swift and strategic intervention, the operation was a success." A heavy silence fell. His colleagues stared at Parker, whose face betrayed a searing shame. The police officer, who had thought he had demonstrated his superiority, now realized that every move had been watched, every mistake calculated to expose his incompetence. David Carter then stood up, his voice calm but firm. "James, it is clear that your behavior and handling of this mission do not meet the standards of our institution. Disciplinary measures will be applied immediately." Parker's cheeks flushed red. He was humiliated in front of all his colleagues, unable to respond, while Angela remained impassive, her calm contrasting with Parker's panic. To top it all off, Angela concluded with a slight smile. "Authority is not measured by size or skin color, nor by momentary arrogance. It is measured by competence, respect, and the ability to act with discernment." Every word was a lesson, every look a reminder of his fall. Parker understood that his attempt to humiliate him had not only failed, but had backfired in the most spectacular way possible. As he left the room, stunned and ashamed, Angela turned to David and whispered, "The lesson has been taught, but it is important for everyone to know that one should never underestimate the quiet strength of those whom one believes to be weak." David nodded. Parker, on the other hand, had learned the hard way that arrogance can be very costly, especially when one ignores the true forces that lie behind a calm and respectful appearance. And in the restored calm of headquarters, Angela Carter, a respected and formidable captain, had won her revenge in a perfect way, subtle, methodical, and memorable for all those who had witnessed this spectacular humiliation.